On graduation day, while the auditorium was still applauding their speech, she stepped back to the microphone and announced the breakup in front of everyone: professors, families, their entire graduating class. He stood still for 2 seconds. Then he reached out and took the microphone back.
My girlfriend tried to humiliate me at graduation on the mic. She didn't expect me to answer back. My name is Javier. I'm 24 years old and I just graduated with a degree in architecture. This isn't a story I expected to be telling. I used to see these things online and assume there was exaggeration involved, that the reality couldn't possibly be that raw. After what happened at my graduation, I understand now that sometimes reality lands harder than any viral story. I met Magdalena 6 months before university started. There was an optional intro course on architectural design, the kind of thing people take to get ready before the program officially begins. We were both in it. Nothing significant happened that day. We exchanged a few ideas during a design exercise and went our separate ways. But when the first semester started and I saw her again, something was different. An immediate familiarity, like a small foundation, already existed between us. We started talking more: assignments, professors, projects, then more personal conversations. We discovered we thought in similar ways. Both disciplined, both taking the program seriously. 1 month into the semester, we were together. I know that sounds fast, but in that moment, everything just fit naturally, without drama, without second guessing. It simply happened. For the first few years, the relationship was stable in a way most people don't get to experience in college. We weren't a volatile couple. We were the opposite. People in our program saw us as the reference point. Always together, always collaborating, projects that stood out. Long nights working on architectural models, revising blueprints, preparing submissions right up to the deadline. We supported each other through stress, and in architecture, stress is a permanent condition. There was a real partnership dynamic on top of the romantic relationship. We were both competitive, but never against each other. We competed together for the best project, the best grade, the best result, and we delivered. Over the semesters, we positioned ourselves among the top students in our graduating class. Our professors respected us. Our classmates looked up to us. Outside of school, the relationship also seemed solid. We went out, had quiet moments, talked about future plans. Back then, everything pointed toward continuing after graduation.
Relationships built inside highly competitive environments create an illusion of depth. Academic partnership feels like emotional intimacy, but they're different things. When the environment that brought you together disappears, what's left is sometimes much less than it appeared.
Over time, I started noticing changes in Magdalena. Nothing abrupt at first. Loose comments, almost harmless in isolation. It all started in our final year. I remember a conversation where she said something like, "When we're done with school, I want to actually live, go out more, experience things I missed by being so focused." I didn't find it strange at the time. After 5 demanding years, wanting to decompress made sense. The problem wasn't that comment, it was how often similar ideas kept returning. She talked more and more about parties, meeting new people, enjoying life, not in a light tone, more like someone saying they'd been missing something essential. At the same time, she started spending more time with a group of friends I didn't know well. Not bad people, but their mindset was very different from ours. More impulsive, more focused on immediate enjoyment. And when I was around, those friends made comments that didn't sit right with me. "You should enjoy yourself more, Magda. You can't stay with your first boyfriend forever. Life is short. Don't limit yourself," said with a little smile, like friendly advice. What bothered me wasn't what they said. It was what Magdalena did when she heard it. She didn't respond, didn't push back, didn't set a boundary. She just smiled or changed the subject.
Silence at the wrong moment is a choice. Someone who doesn't defend the relationship when others question it is, on some level, already testing how it feels without it.
The conversations about the future shifted too. We used to talk about working in the same city after graduating, building something together. In the final year, those conversations became vague. When I brought up something long-term, she'd redirect toward something more immediate, more generic. It wasn't a clean break, it was a slow blurring. The relationship continued anyway. We kept spending time together, kept working as a team, kept being, at least from the outside, the same couple as always. If you've ever felt that blurring in a relationship and couldn't name what it was, drop it in the comments, because nobody saw what was coming next. A few months before graduation, several professors approached us with a proposal. They wanted us to deliver the class address, not separately together. They said we represented the academic effort of our generation, the teamwork, the consistency, that it would be meaningful for a couple who had walked the entire program side by side to close that chapter speaking in front of everyone. For me, it was an honor. For Magdalena too, or at least that's what she said. We accepted without overthinking it. For weeks we worked on the speech, or at least that was what I thought we were doing. We exchanged ideas, wrote sections together, organized the structure, but as the date got closer, she started taking more control over what we'd say. She said she wanted it to be more impactful, more authentic. I didn't object, I trusted her. And it made sense. She had always been a perfectionist, but there were moments when something didn't line up. Parts of the speech changed without her mentioning it. She proposed ideas that weren't aligned with what we'd originally planned. When I asked, she'd respond vaguely really just minor adjustments. I didn't push. Maybe I should have. The day came faster than I expected. It was a significant event, not just for us, but for our families. My parents were proud. They had made real sacrifices to support me through the whole program. Magdalena's parents were there too. Both families knew each other well after all these years. Everything felt aligned to be a special moment. They seated us in the front row alongside other top students. There was a specific energy in the air, that particular mix of pride, nostalgia, and nerves that only exists at that kind of event. The ceremony followed its usual structure: faculty speeches, recognition ceremonies, special mentions, and then it was time for the class address. Our moment. Before we walked up to the stage, I looked at Magdalena. She seemed calm. She even smiled. I was nervous but excited. I had no idea what was about to happen. We walked up together while the auditorium applauded. We stood in front of the microphone, and in that instant, something in her expression shifted. It was subtle, but enough that my stomach felt it before my brain could process it. The speech started normally. Just as we'd rehearsed, we alternated sections. I'd deliver a part, she'd continue. We talked about the effort, the sleepless nights, the projects that seemed impossible at the start and became real over time. We acknowledged our professors, our families, the classmates who made the whole process more bearable. Everything flowed the way it should. There were moments when the audience responded with small laughs or nods. It was the kind of speech that did exactly what it was supposed to: close a chapter, honor what was lived. I felt calm. The initial nerves had passed. Magdalena spoke with her usual confidence, firm tone, clear, convincing. Nothing in that moment suggested anything was different. When we reached the end of the speech, we paused briefly. It was the closing we had prepared. We thanked everyone one last time and offered a few words about the future. The auditorium broke into applause. It was a strong moment. Hearing that many people respond positively to something we'd built together, there was a mix of relief and satisfaction that's hard to describe. I turned my head slightly toward Magdalena. I expected that to be the end. It wasn't. She took a small step forward and returned to the microphone. "Before we go, I want to say a few words." The tone had changed. It wasn't the formal tone of the speech anymore. It was personal, direct, looser. I didn't think much of it at first. I figured it was some improvised comment, something brief to close on a more human note. "Friends," she continued, "we just finished the most boring chapter of our lives." A few people laughed lightly, as if it were a joke. "Studying and studying wears you out." More reactions. "I was the top student," she said without hesitation, and honestly, I regretted a little. The reaction shifted. Not rejection, but a collective surprise. Not going out more with my friends, not meeting more people, being so hard on myself. I watched her, trying to understand where this was going. It wasn't part of the speech. It wasn't anything we discussed. "So starting today, I'm free," she continued. "I'll do whatever I want. The good girl is done." The auditorium reacted more intensely now. Shouts, applause, some laughter. The kind of message that in another context might read as liberating. But I was already feeling a discomfort I couldn't ignore. Something wasn't right. And then the moment arrived. "Do the same," she said. Enough of being well behaved. The shouts grew for a second. And then, without a pause, she added, "So today, in front of our entire graduating class, I want to tell you, Javier, we're done." The noise disappeared, not gradually, immediately, like someone had cut the sound. Complete silence, heavy, uncomfortable. It felt like time stopped for an instant. My mind was trying to process what I'd just heard, but the pieces weren't connecting. I looked at her. For the first time since she'd started speaking, I noticed something different on her face. Nerves, faint but present, in how she was breathing, in how she was avoiding my eyes. "I'm sorry," she continued, her voice slightly less steady, "but I want to be free and meet other people." Each word landed with a weight that's difficult to explain. "You're my first and only boyfriend," she added, "so I still have a lot of good men to meet." The silence deepened. Nobody reacted. Nobody knew how. I felt like everything around me had become unreal. The faces in the crowd were blurry, the sounds distant. There was a pressure in my chest, a mix of disbelief and pain I didn't know how to handle. It wasn't just what she was saying. It was the place, the moment, the method. She had chosen this instant with our families in the audience, with every professor watching, with our entire graduating class present to say this. I felt an immediate impulse to walk off the stage, to just leave, but something stopped me. Maybe it was shock, maybe pride, maybe simply the refusal to let that be the last image everyone kept of me in that moment. So I did something I hadn't planned. I reached out and took the microphone. Magdalena looked at me, clearly surprised. I took a breath. My voice wasn't perfect when it came out, but it came out. "So your whole freedom speech is basically just you announcing you want to be with other people?" The auditorium reacted immediately. That collective sound, the one that rises when someone says something nobody was expecting, filled the entire space. Magdalena shook her head quickly. "That's not what this is," she said, visibly uncomfortable. But it was already too late to stop it. "Seriously, you needed attention so badly," I continued, "that you had to break up with me in front of everyone." I didn't raise my voice. It wasn't a shout, but each word came out with a clarity that made it land harder than volume ever could. I added, pausing briefly, "I get it now." Some people were already anticipating what was coming. "This is more of an announcement, something like, 'Look at me, I'm available, guys.'" The first laughs appeared. Not massive, but they were there. Magdalena opened her mouth as if she were about to respond. She didn't say anything. "You should be embarrassed," I said finally. Not elegant, not calculated, but honest in that moment. I breathed again, feeling the adrenaline taking over. "But look, if you want, we can help." The auditorium was completely locked in. The initial discomfort had started turning into something else entirely. Let's find you some candidates. More laughs, clearer now. I looked out at the crowd. All right, guys, I said, raising my hand slightly. Who wants a date with my ex-girlfriend? The reactions exploded. Laughter, murmurs, comments crossing each other. The entire atmosphere had shifted. We'll start the bidding at $1. That was enough to completely shatter the remaining tension. The laughter became widespread. And then, from somewhere in the auditorium, someone shouted, "I'll give $5, and that's already too much." The reaction was immediate. Louder laughter. Some people even applauded. And from another section of the auditorium, another voice, "5 is too high. Honestly, she should be paying us to go out with her." The laughter grew even louder. Some people leaned forward in their seats, others covered their faces. Several just stared at the scene without being able to believe what was actually happening. It was a strange mixture of spectacle and disaster. I was still standing there, microphone in hand. At that point, I wasn't thinking much about what I was saying. I was just reacting. I looked at Magdalena. She was crying openly. "So how about it, Magdalena?" I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "How much do you offer for someone to go out with you and give you that life you want so badly?"
She had calculated that the audience would be her protection, that no one would respond, that he'd simply lower his head. That's the classic miscalculation of someone who uses the crowd as a shield. They assume the other person will shrink. When he didn't shrink, the shield became the trap.
That question seemed to break something definitive in her. She began crying harder. She wasn't trying to speak anymore, wasn't trying to respond. She just dropped her gaze, unable to hold the situation together. That was when one of the professors walked quickly up to the stage. He approached with a serious expression, and without saying much, took the microphone. "That's enough," he said with authority. He signaled us clearly to leave the stage. But the auditorium was already fully invested. From multiple sections, chants began rising. "She wants to cry. She wants to cry." A disorganized chorus. Constant. Magdalena couldn't hold back the tears. She partially covered her face with one hand and without waiting any longer, turned and began making her way off the stage. The problem was that to exit the venue, she had to walk down the main aisle of the auditorium. A completely exposed space. Everyone watching, everyone paying attention, and then something happened that surpassed everything before it. Someone threw a small water bottle. Then another, and another. Within seconds, several people were throwing water bottles in her direction. They weren't dangerous objects, but the visual impact was striking. Water splashing, soaking her clothes, her hair. Magdalena tried to shield herself but couldn't avoid it. She made it to the exit completely drenched. Her parents stood up immediately and ran after her. The contrast was strange. As she left in that state, the auditorium responded with applause. Not supportive applause, applause charged with an energy that's difficult to describe, as if the crowd were collectively validating what had just happened. I stood on the stage a few seconds longer, not quite knowing what to do. The professor signaled me to come down. I did. The moment my feet left the stage, reality began to settle. The noise, the voices, the eyes, everything became sharper all at once. My friends moved in almost immediately. "That was insane," one of them said, somewhere between excitement and disbelief. "I really hope someone recorded that," said another. "Seriously, you did the right thing. She just wanted attention," said a third. I heard the words, but I wasn't fully processing them. I was nodding, responding with short phrases. My head was somewhere else. The ceremony continued. For me, it no longer mattered. The days that followed weren't simple. Right away, a lot of people came looking for me to talk about it. Some congratulated me. Others just wanted the details. The video of the incident started spreading. I don't know who recorded it, but it was inevitable that someone had. Opinions were split. Some people felt it was a fair response. Others thought both of us had crossed a line. But beyond the opinions, I felt empty. Not exactly sadness. Not complete satisfaction either. It was a strange sensation, like something important had ended in the worst possible way. Because beyond everything, Magdalena wasn't just my ex-girlfriend. She had been part of my life for years. We had built a lot of things together, and all of it had ended in a few minutes in front of a packed auditorium. 3 days after the event, Magdalena's mother posted a message on social media. It read, "My daughter had to leave the city because of the mockery she received. I know she did something wrong, but nothing justifies the humiliation she went through. We will be taking legal action against her main aggressor, and I hope this serves as a starting point for other young women who have experienced the same. Misogyny has crossed a line." The post generated a lot of reactions, but not in the direction she was probably expecting. Most of the comments were critical. "Please, your daughter started it. This isn't misogyny. She picked up the mic to publicly humiliate her own boyfriend at his graduation." There was a clear divide, but the majority agreed on one thing: what had happened couldn't be reduced to a single concept. It wasn't simple. It wasn't black or white. A few days later, I received a notification, a legal matter. I thought at first it wouldn't go anywhere, but the document existed. The accusations used terms like intimidation and harassment. I had no experience with that kind of situation. Fortunately, my cousin had just finished law school. I showed him everything. He reviewed the case, carefully analyzed the details, the context, the videos, the witness accounts. His conclusion was direct. There's no basis here. The process went nowhere. The case was dismissed. No legal consequences for me.
The legal attempt was the second act of the same script. When the public humiliation failed to produce the expected result, submission, silence, shame, the next move was to try shifting the narrative to a different stage. But narratives built on top of documented, public actions don't hold when the full context exists.
Over time, things settled down. The attention faded. People moved on with their lives. I heard that Magdalena had left the city. I haven't had direct news of her since, and honestly, I haven't looked. Today, looking at all of it with distance, I don't feel proud of what happened, but I don't feel complete regret either. It was a limit situation, a reaction in an extreme moment, and although the outcome was hard for both of us, it left something very clear. Impulsive decisions made in public from either side carry consequences that go much further than anyone imagines in the moment. She chose that stage, that microphone, that instant, and I chose not to shrink. Neither one of us walked out of that auditorium the same way we walked in. That was the last time I spoke to Magdalena. Probably the last time our stories crossed. No goodbye, just silence.